The leather belt made a sickening snap against my son's back. Time slowed as Owen's scream pierced through our temporary home, a sound I'd never heard from him before, raw terror vibrating through his tiny 5-year-old body. My hands froze mid-fold on the laundry basket as my sister Valerie stood over him, her face twisted with something I couldn't recognize. Orange juice pooled around Owen's dinosaur socks on my parents' kitchen floor, but all I could see was the angry red welt forming across his shoulder blades and the trembling of his little hands as he tried to protect his head. "What the hell are you doing?" My voice came from somewhere primal, tearing through the kitchen as I lunged forward, ripping the belt from Valerie's grip so hard that the leather cut into my palm. She didn't flinch, didn't even look sorry, just stared at me with the same cold superiority she'd worn since childhood. "He disrespected my kitchen." Her voice was eerily calm, poured juice all over my clean floors and laughed about it. "He's 5, I screamed, kneeling beside Owen, who curled tighter into himself, his silent tears soaking through his dinosaur t-shirt. "He didn't do it on purpose." Valerie rolled her eyes, crossing her arms over her designer blouse. "Kids need discipline, Naomi, not your gentle parenting garbage. You coddle him like he's a doll. No wonder he's spoiled." My name is Naomi. I'm 34 and a single mother. This is the story of how I learned that protecting my son meant destroying my family. I'd been living in my parents' guest room for 6 weeks, a humiliating step backward after my ex-husband destroyed our finances in a vindictive divorce. The court battle had drained my savings down to nothing, and when my mother offered temporary shelter, I'd swallowed my pride and accepted. I never imagined that decision would cost so much more than dignity. My family had always operated on a hierarchy, with Valerie at the top, the golden child who could do no wrong, valedictorian, homecoming queen, now a celebrated 5th-grade teacher with a carefully cultivated reputation for excellence. Meanwhile, I was the perpetual disappointment, the daughter who made poor choices, including marrying beneath our family, as my mother put it. But none of that mattered now. All that mattered was the trembling child in my arms, his trust shattered by someone who should have protected him. "It's okay, baby. Mama's here," I whispered, lifting Owen's tear-streaked face. "No one's going to hurt you again." Valerie scoffed and walked out of the kitchen like nothing had happened, like she hadn't just lashed a belt across a 5-year-old's skin. I heard her phone ringing in the next room, her voice immediately switching to the syrupy sweet tone she used for colleagues. The sound of her laughter made bile rise in my throat. That night, after Owen finally fell asleep clutching his stuffed triceratops, I confronted my mother in the dim dining room. The crystal chandelier, a family heirloom she never tired of mentioning, cast shadow patterns across her face as I detailed what had happened. I expected outrage, horror, something. Instead, she sipped her Chardonnay and sighed. "Naomi, you're always overreacting. Valerie's not perfect, but she's your sister. She didn't mean it." My fingers dug into the polished mahogany table. "She hit him," I said, barely keeping my voice steady, "with a belt, multiple times." My mother shrugged, the diamond tennis bracelet on her wrist catching the light. "And that's how we raised you girls. You turned out fine." "No," I whispered, the truth escaping before I could catch it. "I spent years in therapy to feel like a human being again." She sighed like I was exhausting her. "Don't make a mountain out of a molehill. You call the cops, you'll ruin her career. She just got that department head position at Westlake Elementary. She's finally stable." My blood turned to ice. "You care more about her job than your own grandson?" She didn't answer. She didn't have to. The silence said everything. The next morning, Valerie acted like nothing had happened. She breezed into the kitchen in her running clothes, hair perfectly styled despite the workout, and placed a gift-wrapped box in front of Owen at breakfast. Inside was a new toy truck, overpriced and gleaming. "For my favorite nephew," she said, ruffling his hair. Owen flinched at her touch, his little body tensing. I watched his eyes dart to the belt loops on her designer jeans, calculating the threat. No child should have to make those calculations. That night, Owen woke up screaming, clawing at his blankets. "I'll be good, Mommy," he sobbed, clutching his dinosaur. "Please don't let Auntie hurt me again." Something broke inside me, a dam holding back years of my own childhood memories. The way Valerie would pinch me under the table at family dinners when I spoke too much. How she'd accidentally destroy my school projects the night before they were due. The time she pushed me down the stairs and convinced our parents I'd fallen. I held Owen until his breathing steadied, my mind racing. I was broke, jobless, and had nowhere to go. But staying wasn't an option, not for one more night. At 5 a.m., I silently packed everything we owned into 3 garbage bags and my old laundry basket. As I loaded them into my battered Corolla, my mother appeared on the porch, arms crossed over her silk robe. "You're making a mistake," she called out, her voice carrying in the pre-dawn stillness. "Don't come crying when you're homeless again." I didn't look back. I had nothing left to lose. The motel room smelled like bleach and desperation. That first night after leaving my parents' house, Owen and I huddled on the sagging twin bed, the neon vacancy sign casting intermittent blue shadows through the dusty blinds. I held him close, wincing every time his little body shifted and brushed against the welts. I had $317 in my account, 2 pairs of clean clothes, and a 5-year-old who now flinched at sudden movements. But I had something else, too. Rage. Pure, clarifying rage that burned away any doubt. I'd lived my whole life under my family's version of discipline. Slaps that stung. Words that stuck. Favoritism so blatant, it left scars deeper than bruises. My parents worshipped Valerie. Her polished smile, her rehearsed charm, her ability to manipulate anyone into thinking she was innocent. But she wasn't innocent. She was dangerous. And I had let that danger touch my son. Never again. The next few days blurred together in a desperate hustle. I drove to every motel in the area until finding one that offered weekly rates I could barely afford. I applied to every job within walking distance of the motel. Owen colored in the tattered motel Bible, while I made cold calls, filled out applications, and silently promised him things would get better. I scored an overnight shift restocking shelves at a 24-hour grocery store. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest work. The manager, a woman with tired eyes and kind hands, didn't ask questions when I requested advance payment for my first week. I told no one where we were, not even Jordan, my best friend. I changed my phone number and deleted my social media accounts. I knew my mother would call Jordan, would try to sniff us out, guilt me back home. They always called it home when they wanted something. 2 weeks in, I landed a second job doing remote transcription work. Each night after Owen fell asleep, I sat in the motel lobby on their ancient computer, typing through crackling court audio while my son slept in a blanket fort of lobby chairs. The night clerk, a college student named Marcus, pretended not to notice when I smuggled cereal from the continental breakfast for Owen's dinner. Marcus had a sister Owen's age and started bringing children's books from his home for Owen to read. His girlfriend Aisha, a nursing student who sometimes brought him dinner during his shifts, took a liking to Owen. After seeing me struggle to balance childcare and work, she offered to watch him occasionally during my grocery shifts. But survival wasn't enough. Justice burned behind my eyes every time I looked at the fading marks on Owen's back. I wasn't going to let this go. I documented everything. Photos of Owen's bruises, dated and time-stamped, a voice memo from the night he woke up crying, screenshots of texts I'd sent my mother where she dismissed the incident. You blow everything out of proportion. Your sister was just correcting him. The tipping point came 3 weeks after we fled. A knock at our motel door revealed a woman with a government ID and compassionate eyes. Child Protective Services. My heart dropped. I didn't hurt him, I stammered, blocking the doorway. "We know," she said quietly. "We received a report of physical abuse by a family member. Would you like to file a formal complaint?" Someone had filed an anonymous tip. Later, I'd learn it was Marcus, the night clerk who'd overheard Owen's nightmares and noticed his persistent fear. I nodded and retrieved the folder I'd been compiling since the night we left. It wasn't just about bruises anymore. It was about the system that let people like Valerie hide behind credentials and call it discipline. I gave the social worker everything. Even told her about how Valerie had once dragged me down the stairs by my hair when we were kids, and my mother called it sibling rivalry. The investigation began like a slow rolling storm. My mother tried interfering almost immediately, calling from new numbers when I blocked her old ones. She'd gotten my new number from a relative I'd carelessly texted my first night at the motel. "You're being dramatic again," she hissed through the phone. "Valerie could lose her teaching license." "She should," I replied, surprising myself with the steel in my voice. "You destroy your own sister's life over a little spanking?" "No," I said. "Over assault on a 5-year-old. Then I blocked her new number too. Valerie's reaction was more calculated. First came the tearful voicemails. "I'm so sorry it got out of hand. You know how stressful teaching is." Then the emails building a trail of remorse, carefully worded like she expected them to be read by others. She'd found my email through my old online resume that I'd forgotten to take down. She was right. I forwarded every message to CPS. 4 weeks after the CPS visit, the court hearing arrived on a Tuesday morning. I'd scraped together enough for a second-hand blazer, determined not to look like the desperate, motel-dwelling single mother they thought I was. Owen stayed with Aisha, Marcus's girlfriend, who'd become our unlikely guardian angel. Valerie sat across the courtroom in a cream-colored dress and pearls, dabbing at dry eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. My mother sat behind her in Chanel, arms folded, shooting me daggers across the room. They looked like what they'd always been, respectable, affluent, untouchable. But this time, I wasn't alone. I had my advocate, my CPS caseworker, and Owen's new pediatrician, who'd confirmed the bruises were not accidental and consistent with belt marks. "Ms. Patterson," the judge addressed Valerie, "you maintain this was appropriate discipline." "Your Honor," she said, her voice trembling with practiced emotion, "I simply tried to correct dangerous behavior. My nephew was about to pull boiling water on himself. I reacted out of protective instinct." A lie, a complete fabrication. "That's not what happened," I said, my voice stronger than I expected. The judge turned to me. "You have evidence to the contrary?" I nodded to my lawyer, who presented the time-stamped photos of Owen's injuries, the text messages, and something else. Security footage from my parents' kitchen. The camera my father had installed after a break-in last year, which my mother had forgotten existed. My lawyer had subpoenaed the footage during discovery, something I hadn't thought possible. The black and white video played silently on the courtroom monitor. There was no boiling water, no dangerous situation, just a 5-year-old accidentally spilling juice and a grown woman deliberately retrieving a belt from another room before returning to strike him. Valerie's face drained of color. My mother's mouth formed a perfect O of shock. The judge ruled in my favor. Valerie was issued a restraining order and reported to the school board. She lost her position as department head 2 weeks later, and her teaching license was suspended pending review. I learned this through my CPS caseworker, who continued checking in with us regularly. My mother left me a voicemail that night, her voice slurring slightly from wine. "You've ruined this family," she spat. "Don't ever expect our help again." I didn't cry when I got the court order. I cried when Owen smiled again, a real smile, the kind that reached his eyes, the kind he hadn't worn in weeks. 2 years passed, 2 long, grueling, healing years that saw us move from that motel to a small subsidized apartment I qualified for with help from a victim's assistance program. I had officially divorced my ex-husband, who disappeared to another state without contesting custody. My friendship with Jordan had slowly rekindled after I explained why I'd vanished. Owen started kindergarten at a new school with teachers who understood gentle encouragement. He still tensed at the sound of belts, but no longer woke up in cold sweats. I secured a small apartment with peeling linoleum and temperamental plumbing, but it was ours. Owen painted our mailbox blue with his name in wobbly letters. Every morning, checking that mailbox reminded me how far we'd come from that motel lobby. I never looked back, until the day my mother appeared at my new workplace. I'd landed a position managing the children's section at a small local library. The pay wasn't spectacular, but the hours worked with Owen's school schedule, and I'd found peace among the books and the children who visited my reading corner. I was arranging a display of dinosaur books when I saw her reflection in the glass door. Aged, bitter, wrapped in an expensive cashmere coat like armor, she'd found me through a community newspaper article about the library's new children's programming. "Can we talk?" she asked, eyes darting around the children's area. "I'm working," I replied without turning. "I'm your mother," she said, as if the title still held weight. "No," I said, my voice calm but cold. "You were Valerie's mother. I was just someone you raised to be quiet." She scoffed, stepped closer. "Valerie's not doing well. She lost everything. Her position, her reputation. She drinks now." Her voice dropped to an accusatory whisper. "You did that." "No," I said, finally facing her. "She did that to herself. I just stopped covering for it." Her eyes narrowed. "We lost our standing in the community because of you." "You lost your masks," I corrected. She softened her voice, switching tactics. "Owen deserves to know his aunt. Family is family." I tilted my head. "You know what Owen said when I told him Valerie wasn't allowed near him anymore?" She blinked. "What?" He said, "Good, I don't want the belt lady to find me." My mother's face twisted, the carefully maintained facade cracking. For a second, I saw the real her, the woman who used to slam doors and tell me I was lucky to have a roof over my head. "Get out," I said quietly. "This is a place for children to feel safe." A week later, I received a handwritten letter from Valerie, the elegant cursive, a remnant of her performative perfectionism. She'd gotten my work address from our mother. "I forgive you," it read. The letter rambled about how difficult her life had become, how losing her position was disproportionate punishment, and how she hoped I would move past this grudge for the sake of family healing. I wrote back one sentence. "Forgiveness without accountability is just manipulation with better marketing." I mailed it without a return address. But the story didn't end there. The same school district that had suspended Valerie reached out to me about speaking at their annual staff safety training. They contacted me through my library email, which was listed on the library's website. Apparently, my case had become a watershed moment in their mandatory reporting policies. I gave a presentation called "When Protection Requires Separation." My hands shook the entire time, but my voice didn't. Educators approached me afterward, some with tears in their eyes, others with stories of their own. A small nonprofit offered me a position developing resources for parents escaping family violence. I accepted and created something new, the Owen Project, a support center where children could report family abuse without fear, where parents could find emergency resources without judgment. A year later, on a bright spring morning in May, the city awarded us additional funding for expansion. The ribbon-cutting ceremony took place outside our new, larger facility. Owen wore a miniature button-down shirt. I wore a navy blazer and confidence that no longer needed validation. The mayor handed me the ceremonial scissors. I thanked everyone who believed in second chances, in justice, in healing. And then I saw her at the back of the small crowd, my mother alone. Not with Valerie, not with anyone. just a shadow of her former self. She didn't wave. She just watched. I hadn't invited her, but I didn't stop the ceremony either, because that day wasn't about her. It wasn't even about what Valerie had done. It was about every child who'd ever been told, "It's not that bad," while nursing wounds no one wanted to acknowledge. It was about Owen, who now built towering Lego structures without flinching when people walked behind him. It was about me, who finally, after a lifetime of silence, spoke loudly enough to be heard. As cameras flashed and the small crowd applauded, I whispered something to myself. You survived, and that's what matters. Not revenge, not punishment, but rising from the ashes without letting them consume you. My sister beat my child with a belt. My mother defended her, but I built something stronger than their cruelty. A future, a voice, a refuge for those who had none. Before you go, here's a quick bonus for sticking around. If you love learning and growing like I do, you need to try audiobooks. I've got an exclusive deal with Audible. Your first month is completely free. That's access to over 500,000 titles. Zero cost to you. All the details are waiting in the description. Don't miss this one.